Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa wala. Welcome to the Fiqh of Hadith class. We are starting, inshallah, the book of Umdatul Ahkam. This book was compiled by Al-Imam Abdul Ghani Al-Maqdisi rahimahullah. Abdul Ghani Al-Maqdisi rahimahullah is the Imam who wrote the book Al-Kamal fi Asma' al-Rijal. If you remember that, this book based on it, and eventually Ibn Majah's book was added as the 6th book of Sunnah. Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi rahimahullah, who wrote this book, died in the year 600 of Hijrah. The ahadith he compiled are 425 hadith. 425 hadith. That's the book. It's only 425 hadith. But what is unique about those ahadith, what is special, is that all these ahadith are related to the rulings. So you don't find a hadith about the recommendation of being good to your neighbor. You don't find a hadith about the punishment and the reward. It's about the rulings of jurisprudence. Ahkam al-fiqhiyya. That's why it is called Umdatul Ahkam. It is the basis for the rulings. These ahadith are in both Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. So we don't have to worry about the authenticity. Every single hadith here, it is authentic. It is in al-Bukhari and Muslim or in one of them, because sometimes we have added narrations. Scholars wrote several books, but this is the lightest or the shortest one, and it includes only the authentic ahadith. So it should be sufficient for you. As a student of knowledge, you should know all these ahadith. Then you move forward. This is a further step. Bulugh al-Maram. Bulugh al-Maram for Al-Hafiz ibn Hajar Al-Asqalani rahimahullah. That's a bigger book. And it includes ahadith from the Sunan, all the Sunan. Some of these ahadith are not authentic though. But it is a bigger book, and it is very, very important book also. Then if you wanted, you move forward, and there is a bigger book, Muntaqa al-Akhbar, for Al-Majd ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, the grandfather of Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah, Sheikh al-Islam. Al-Majd ibn Taymiyyah went further for more ahadith. So we have Muntaqa al-Akhbar, roughly 5,000 hadith there. So you move from 425 to over 1,000 to approximately 5,000. So what we will discuss is Umdat al-Ahkam, inshallah. First, again, usually, as the books of fiqh, we start with the book of purification. That's how the books of Sunan, of hadith, start, with purification. And the first hadith is Hadith Umar radiallahu anhu. I heard Allah's Apostle sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, who heard that? Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. The reward of deeds depends upon the intentions. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. And every person will get the reward according to what he has intended. So whoever emigrated for worldly benefits or for a woman to marry, his immigration was for what he immigrated for. Where do you find this hadith? First hadith. It is the first hadith of Sahih Bukhari. And it is the first hadith here. Why? Now we mentioned the reasons to start at Sahih Bukhari, because it was not the book of purification where it was mentioned there. It was the beginning of revelation. Here, why we have it in the book of purification? Actually, you could have it in any book you want. This hadith, as Imam Shafi rahimahullah said, 1/3 of the knowledge. And it is involved in 70 chapters of fiqh. One of the scholars said, if I had a book with chapters, I would start every chapter with this hadith. But here, why would we have it in the book of purification? What's the connection between purification and the intention? It is a form of ibadah, but it is not purification. So we could put this hadith in the book of prayer, it's form of ibadah. We could put this hadith in fasting, it's form of ibadah. Yes?
Reminder for the author himself what he's doing.
That's what Imam Bukhari rahimahullah did. It could be also for Imam Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi rahimahullah, but we have now rulings. We need to derive rulings. Since it is mentioned in the book of purification, that means once you need to purify yourself, do you have to have intention or not? Yes or no? Yes. Is that agreed upon? No. Yes, very good. Imam Hanif rahimahullah says, you don't. Why? What's the basis of this agreement?
Could be seen as clean or
Yeah, is it rational act or it's irrational? It is ibadah. If it's form of ibadah only, you don't need to have intention. Or you need to. When do you need the intention? With the rational or with the irrational? Irrational. What about the rational? Why do we use the intention? Now this is important topic. Why do we use the intention? To worship Allah. What's the advantage of the intention? Someone did an act with intention and someone did an act without intention. Very good. That's one of the purposes of having the intention is what? To get the reward. What else? How you get away from hypocrisy?
Like you're just pretending that you're doing it for the other people. But if you're doing it for then you're not doing it for other people. Hypocrites are doing it. They're hiding themselves from the truth.
Yeah, maybe.
to avoid punishment.
Makes one more conscious of the acts that he's about to do.
Yeah, you're close. More conscious. We use the intention to differentiate between the ibadat. What's the difference between performing Salat al-Dhuhr and Salat al-Asr? It's the same act. It's the different time. How do you know this is different than this? With your intention. You're differentiating between the ibadat. Also, you differentiate between what is ibadah and what is aada, what is habit. We have ibadah, which is worship, and we have aada, which is a habit, routine. Someone enters the restroom every day 5-6 times. Why he goes there? Because he wants to clean himself. Another one enters the restroom, same purpose, he wants to clean himself, but he remembers that cleaning himself by itself is a worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he's intending from that to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Which one will get the reward? The one who intended the worship. So we differentiate between the ibadat through the intention, and we differentiate between the ibadat and the adat through also the intention. Why the intention is so important? Or how first we know that the intention is so important? The entire reward is based on what? Intention. So it is the basis for the reward. There is no intention, there is no reward. That's what the Prophet ﷺ said. So why it is significant? The intention. What did you say earlier? Yes. The act itself could be done outwardly, you see it very, very nice. But from inside, there is no pure intention. While another act, similar to that one, with less quality, but with better intention, which one will get more reward? The one with the correct intention. So it is very important to work on intention. Look at us nowadays. We need to learn the rulings of the prayer, takbir. bowing, standing, prostrating. What do we say here? What do we say? What's the use if you knew every single step with every letter that is said, but you did not have intention? How much time do you spend working on our intentions? It's very important. What is your intention? What if you have a mixed intention? Now here the Prophet ﷺ said the reward is based on what? Intention. You have intention, you get the reward. You don't have the intention, you don't get the reward. What if you have mixed? You have the intention for the sake of Allah, but also so people can praise you, can say, MashaAllah, he's devout Muslim, he's righteous, he's pious. What?
It depends on like on Hajj. You can have intention for Hajj.
It depends.
So in this situation, I have a minor intention to sell the products and so on.
Okay.
It's permissible, but in that case, you're doing one intention for Salah.
Mhm.
That's okay, fine. The other intention is incorrect. You're doing it for other people. So in that case, it's not.
You wanted to pray subh, and someone owes you money. You know you will find him in the masjid. So you said, let's go. I'll pray subh, and at the same time, I will get the money.
That's okay.
What's the ruling here?
That's okay.
Is it only exceptional for Hajj? So why you mentioned Hajj
No, I'm just
as an
saying
example?
That's the proof. Right?
What's the ruling again? You have mixed intention.
It's okay.
It's okay. So associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is okay.
No, it depends on the other intention.
Hmm?
It depends on the other intention.
Depends on the act.
It depends on the intention or the act. You're confusing me here.
Intention depends on the act.
Okay. The act is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but at the same time to have some worldly gains. That's the act.
If it's like salah, siyam, zakat, hajj,
Uh-huh.
it can only be solely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But anything else, if you do it with the intention of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and also gaining a worldly good, then there's no problem.
Yeah, you're close. Is the intention pure for that action? Was made pure from the beginning? So you intended to fast for the sake of Allah, you intended to perform Hajj for the sake of Allah, you intended to pray for the sake of Allah, or from the beginning your intention is not for the sake of Allah. You intended to pray because people are watching. You did not essentially wanted to pray, but you saw them. You did not want to go for Hajj for the sake of Allah, but there is CEO of that company and you applied for a job there and he's going for Hajj, so you wanted to go. Maybe you could get the job. If that's the intention, what will happen? If it's tainted from the beginning, then there is no reward. What if the intention was changed? In the beginning, your intention is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then, few things happened. You were intending to go for Hajj for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then you knew that this person is going. So you said, great, now for sure I'll go for Hajj, never mind what happened. You wanted to pray for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's your intention. And usually you pray for 5 minutes. You started the prayer, you noticed someone is looking at you. The 5 minutes jumped to 8 minutes, 9 minutes. Is that okay or not okay? No. It depends. If you had a change in the intention and you fought it, then it doesn't affect the action. Why? Because from the beginning you wanted to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The shaitan tried and you fought, there is nothing. If you kept it, then it's not okay. You won't get the reward. If the main purpose is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and no one else, and that was your cause, and then later you achieved a bargain, worldly thing, then it is permissible. How do you know that? Someone is giving donation, but at the same time he wants the receipt for tax deduction purposes. If he knew that he won't get the tax deduction receipt, he won't pay then, that means his donation is not pure. While if his donation is given away, whether he got the receipt or not, but he prefers to have the receipt, then it is pure. Same thing with Hajj. He's going for Hajj anyways. But if he could make some money out of selling some commodities there, then it is permissible. If you're going for jihad, your purpose is to fight in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That was your main purpose. But then, you hoped maybe you could kill someone who's rich and you get his money. That will not affect the act. Is this clear? Yes or no? Okay. So this is the first hadith. Hadith about intentions, and it is great hadith. It is very long. You could talk for hours about it. Separate chapters and books written about this hadith. The next hadith, Hadith Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh. Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, the prayer of none among you will be accepted if he is in state of impurity till he performs ablution. لا يقبل الله صلاة أحدكم إذا أحدث حتى يتوضأ. What do we learn from this hadith? Condition for prayer. What is it? To be in the state of purity. So if someone came and said, I want to pray, I just woke up, I want to pray, or I responded to the call of nature, I came and I wanted to pray. You tell him, no, you have to make wudu. He tells you, no, I don't have to. Give me an evidence. What do you tell him? This hadith. What if he told you, okay, this hadith is fine, but it's not enough. I want something else. The ayah of Surah Al-Ma'idah. O you who believe, إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ, if you intended to pray, you wash. So it is the same thing. We have the ayah and we have the hadith. The hadith makes it clear that the hadith is an evidence that the prayer won't be accepted without wudu. In another term, you could say the wudu is condition for the prayer. There is no prayer is accepted without the wudu. However, there is a condition here. If he is in a state of impurity, so what if you are in a state of purity? Do you have to still renew your wudu? No, that's not what we're talking about here. If you are in the state of impurity, what's the state of impurity? In Arabic, لا يقبل الله صلاة أحدكم إذا أحدث. What's the meaning of أحدث? Hadath. It could be major or minor. What is it? Major or minor what?
Major means janaba. Say the janaba or...
What is it? What is hadath? What's the meaning of hadath? Impurity. So the paints are impurity. Grease is impurity.
Purity from your body.
What is impurity? Mud is impurity. So if you have mud, huh?
Something that's impure by nature.
By nature.
By nature it's not the same.
Do you agree with this? We're recording, so I want... Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. That's what Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh said. Al-hadathu fusa'un aw durat.
Being in a state where you cannot make worship, or you can't do the ritual worship like someone.
That's inaccurate, but very close. Being in a state where you cannot perform worship. There are some worships you don't need even any state. Yes, you mentioned the example, so instead of the example you say, being in a state where you cannot perform the worship, that the purity is conditioned for it. That's the hadath. So it includes all the types of the impurity. Here, we're not talking about the physical impurity. which is part, still part. We're talking about the ritual impurity. The state of impurity, it's ritual impurity. What are the things that cause someone to be in the state of impurity? Whatever comes out from the two outlets. That's the correct opinion. Another opinion says whatever comes out from the body, even from the mouth. If you throw up, does that invalidate the wudu or not? Some scholars say yes. If you bleed. So this is one type. Another type of hadath. What did we study? Come on, tell me, what are the things that invalidate wudu?
Long sleep.
How many? First, before that, how many? Remember the numbers. 6. What are they? Being the state of unconsciousness. Hmm?
According to Sheikh, yes, touching
Touching the private part with open hand. Okay.
the anus also.
Touching the anus.
Touching foreign woman.
Touching foreign woman.
What leaves the private parts?
Yeah, any outcome from anything, any discharge from the outlet.
Some say blood, some say throwing up. Sleeping, not sitting.
Sleeping while not sitting. Okay, how many? 5. The last one is what?
Oh, that was
Loss of consciousness.
no. And what was it? That one? Is it leaving? Yeah. Apostasy.
Hmm?
Yeah, apostasy. Yeah. What was that one? There was a one for apostasy.
That's not here.
That's not there.
What's the
See? That's the problem when you don't know the numbers. Now it's good, at least you knew they are 6. But you got most of them. Actually you counted them, but you forgot to list it as one. When you memorize poetry, it's easier. نواقض الوضوء 5 خارج من مخرجيه إلى المني الخارج ونومه إلا مع التمكين وما أزال العقل كالجنون ومس فرج الآدمي ببطن كف ولمس أنثى رجلا حيث انكشف. No, that invalidates the major. So this is the ritual impurity. The ritual impurity is divided to 2. We have major and minor. The minor, what invalidates the wudu, and these are the things, 6 or 5 according to some scholars. The major, is what? 6, right? What are they? 3 pertain to
Contacting the 3 pertain to women's
Mhm.
menstruation and for childbirth and postnatal bleeding.
yeah,
The other
postnatal bleeding,
the other ones are
menstruation, and
childbirth.
the birth itself. Yeah,
The other ones are the contact of the uncircumcised parts.
the uncircumcised.
Oh, sorry. I just said it wrong.
Yeah,
Ejaculation and death.
death. Okay, very good. This is the second hadith. The third hadith, Abdullah bin Amr, now, radiyallahu anhuma, reported, we returned from Mecca to Medina with Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And when we came to some water on the way, some of the people were in a hurry at the time of the afternoon, at the time of afternoon prayer, and performed ablution hurriedly. That's what we do every time, not only when and when we reached them, their heels were dry. No water had touched them. Actually, you see, all this page is not mentioned in the book. But this is the story. The Prophet ﷺ said, woe to heels from hellfire. وَيْلٌ لِلْأَعْقَابِ مِنَ النَّارِ. make your ablution through and perfect. أسبغ الوضوء. Okay? ويل للأعقاب من النار. Now the point in all this hadith and the clause that is mentioned in the book, woe to hills from hellfire. But you won't understand it. What does it mean? Woe to hills from hellfire. You need to go back to the story. This is the story. What are you writing? Are you writing the hadith? I told you it is there. I did not bring anything. All of the ahadith are in Al-Bukhari and Muslim. All of them are available. Don't write the hadith. You can write the beginning of it, keyword, that you can search it later, but it is there. Don't waste your time. So what do you learn from this hadith? Now, in the rulings, what do we learn from this hadith? Remember, we're talking about tahara, purification. How? You have to complete your wudu. How? Everyone would say, my wudu is complete. All the parts
that need to be wet.
Need to be wet. Fully. What if you missed something? So what?
That's a condition of the prayer.
Hmm?
It's a condition of the prayer.
So what will happen?
The invalidation of the prayer. That means the prayer is not valid.
What's the evidence the prayer is not valid?
The heels on the hellfire. Why would your heels be in the hellfire?
Exactly, that's the point. Now here the Prophet ﷺ said, heels are what? What will happen to them? Woe to heels from hellfire. So this is a threat of punishment, and you won't be blameworthy for something that is recommended. It has to be mandatory. So you have to wash all the parts fully. What if you did not do? You deserve punishment. You deserve punishment for leaving something. That means this thing is a condition, which means if you did not do it, the thing that is based on that condition is invalid, which is what? The prayer. Now, did the companions perform wudu or they did not? Yes, they did. They performed wudu. But what was the problem for those some companions? They were in a hurry. And because of that, what happened? They missed what? The heels. So they did the wudu, but what did they miss? The heels. What did the Prophet ﷺ say? Woe, that's threat of punishment. What about those who don't perform wudu at all? If those only left the heels, that's the punishment. What about those who don't perform wudu at all? What will happen? Is it mandatory to wash the feet or you can wipe over it? Wash. What's the evidence? What fatha? No, we're not. We're here in this hadith.
You can't wipe. If you wipe, you'll always be dry. You can get dry spots here and there. If you just wipe them,
Yeah, you have to wash them. Based on this hadith, the obligation is what? To wash. Let alone the ayah. The ayah is clear about the fatha. وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُسِكُمْ وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ. So you have to wash it. But here from the hadith, because they were in a hurry, they did not wash, they just wiped. And that's the opinion of all four imams, all scholars of Ahl-Sunnah. Who differed in this issue, disagreed? Shia. Yeah, they say it is permissible to wipe over your foot. But the correct opinion is what? You have to wash. And based on that, if you wipe, your prayer is incorrect. Because the wudu is a condition for the prayer. Every part of the wudu is condition. So you miss with one part of the wudu, the entire wudu is incorrect. So the prayer is incorrect. You learn from the hadith the significance of the wudu, of every part of the wudu. One other issue is the sequence. Now, what did they do when the Prophet ﷺ said this?
They rushed to the prayer after they did this. They rushed.
They rushed.
So this is
But the Prophet ﷺ threatened them.
what they do after they did.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
make the wudu through and perfect. What did they do? Did they redo? Or they just washed the feet? They redid the entire wudu. What do you learn from this? Isn't washing the feet the last part? Wasn't it sufficient to wash the last part and that's it? Why they had to go through the entire wudu?
There's a time frame too.
Yeah, you remember? Tell me.
Has to be still wet in order to proceed.
So
It has, that's one of the conditions, that it's not a long lapse between each part.
Is the sequence mandatory
Yes.
based on this hadith? Sequence of actions.
Yeah, but the wudu is invalid.
Hmm?
So if you broke,
Not based on this hadith. That
Continuation.
they are not breaking the sequence. If they are washing.
No, the sequence in time, not the order.
Oh, yeah, continue.
Concession, or what you say, concession.
Yes.
Is it mandatory or not?
yes.
Based on this hadith, it is what? Mandatory, because it was sufficient, because it's the last part, so they won't break any order. But they redid the entire wudu. So these are the issues of the hadith. The next hadith, hadith number 4. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh reported the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam saying, when any one of you awakes up from sleep, he should put water in his nose and then flush it. And whoever wipes himself with pebbles, he should make use of an odd number of pebbles. وَمَنِ اسْتَجْمَرَ فَلْيُوتِرْ مَنِ اسْتَنْشَقَ فَلْيَسْتَنْثِرْ وَمَنِ اسْتَجْمَرَ فَلْيُوتِرْ. And whoever wakes up from sleep, he must not put his hand in the utensil till he has washed it 3 times, for he doesn't know where his hand was during the night. Okay, this is the hadith. When any one of you awakes up from sleep, he should put water in his nose and then flush it. Why? This is the first question. Why? Prophet ﷺ said, and that's sufficient. But is there any? Yes. Very good. The shaitan, what does he do when someone sleeps? The shaitan sleeps where? On your nose. Okay. What if you recited Ayatul Kursi before you sleep? You're protected, right? So how we reconcile? No, it's not specific. In general, but isn't the general Muslim supposed to do this? Recite Surah Ayatul Kursi? So this does not apply. What do you think?
Maybe it's not rational, you should do it.
Even if it's not rational, you still do it.
I know you still do it, but do you try to rationalize it? What do you come up with? Now, when you recite Ayatul Kursi, what happens? You are protected from the shaitan. That does not mean the shaitan leaves, but he cannot harm you. That's the meaning. While here, he remains there. So you remove him totally by flushing. Now that's not really what we're concerned about here, because we need fiqh rulings. What's the ruling of flushing the nose? Sniffing the water and flushing it. Obligatory. Why? This is a command, and the command necessitates what? Obligation. That's in principle. Does that apply here? In the hadith, yes. Why you say no? That's what the Prophet ﷺ said. He should put water in his nose and then flush it. And based on that, some scholars said, istinshaq and istinthar, this is mandatory.
This is outside of wudu, right?
After wudu?
Outside of wudu. This is just you getting up. And then
One wakes up.
this is one wakes up. It's not
Yeah, but it's talking about what? The wudu. This is part of the wudu.
It says he should. It does not say he must or he has to. Like I could tell Ibrahim, you should go for your PhD. But
That's
I
the
said,
English.
Yeah, but this is the weakness of the translation. In the Arabic, فَلْيَسْتَنْشِقْ. That's a command. This is the first part, okay? The next part. And whoever wipes himself with pebbles, he should make use of an odd number of pebbles. وَمَنْ اسْتَجْمَرَ فَلْيُوتِرْ. You know, at their time, they used to have small stones and water. They did not have that common water, so they had the pebbles. If you use the pebbles, how much do you use? Odd number, at least 3. 3, 5, 7. Why? Also, there is a reason. Usually, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves the odd numbers. إِنَّ اللَّهَ وِتْرٌ يُحِبُّ الْوِتْرِ. This is what the Prophet ﷺ told you. So nowadays, how do you apply this? If you have stones, if you were in the desert, you were in a place where there is no water, or even if you are using something in replacement of these pebbles, toilet paper or anything else, use odd number. It is better always to use both of them, stones and water. So if you have same thing, toilet paper and water, use both of them. One of the interpretations of the ayah, فِيهِ رِجَالٌ يُحِبُّونَ أَن يَتَطَهَّرُوا. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praised the people who like to purify themselves, the Prophet ﷺ asked them, what do you do? They said, we use pebbles and then we use water. So it removes the substance of the impurity and it removes any trace. Is it sufficient to use one of them only? Yes, it is. It is sufficient to use water only. It is sufficient to use toilet paper only or pebbles. But it is better to mix them both. The last part. And whoever wakes up from sleep, he must not put his hands in the utensil till he has washed it 3 times. Why? It is mentioned here. What did the Prophet ﷺ say? You don't know where your hands were while you are asleep. Maybe in your nose, maybe inside. You don't know. Is this a must, command, or recommended? It should be a command in principle. Why? It is prohibition, and prohibition necessitates forbiddance. So if you did it, you're blameworthy. So it is a command to avoid it. That's nahi. What if someone did? He put his hands. What happens to the water? Now again, we're talking about utensil. Now, in our time, when we have the faucet, you will just wash your hands.
It's still good to do it though.
Is it or is it not?
It's still good. Wash your hands
So,
in the mornings.
Someone has a utensil, like 2 gallons.
Depends on what it'll change. The first thing to check. You have to see if it's changing the color.
You just put your hands.
Yeah, but it could, like this, what had on his hand is something very, very bad. You can smell something from the water, I suppose. But you're not going to use
Yeah,
it.
you smell your skin.
Yeah, if it's bad, not the skin, but whatever.
Do you still use this water or not?
Depends.
No? Who said no?
I see.
No? Why?
Because now the water is no longer able to purify.
Based on what? You came to this conclusion.
Came to this conclusion because of the Hadeeth of
Sallallahu alaihi
Rasulullah
wasallam.
said that you should wash your hands before you,
You should. You did not.
but you didn't. Your hand was still dirty. So
Why? Why you assume your hand's still dirty?
because you don't know what it is.
You don't know exactly. That's the thing. You don't know. So maybe and maybe not. You know this water is pure. You don't know where your hands were. You don't overrule something which is certain with something which is doubtful. Yes, there is a doubt that your hands were in something impure. But that's only doubt, while you have certainty here. So you can still use it. Unless, then there is something certain. If you are certain, that's another issue. But in principle, it's still usable. You don't overrule something which is certain by something which is doubtful. This is basic rule in fiqh. This is a maxim actually of fiqh. For he does not know where his hand was during the night. What if someone slept in the day? Does it apply or no?
Yes. Yes.
He said night and you say, because usually people sleep at night, so it should be general. Other scholars said no, it pertains only to the night. The day sleeping has different ruling. Prophet ﷺ knows to distinguish and differentiate between night and day. He could have said once he slept, and that's it. So these are the rulings of this hadith, and we will stop here inshallah with this. We conclude this session of fiqh of hadith.